Good morning and happy Friday. Randy Mendez with the Mendez Home Team at eXp Realty. And today, as always, from Fridays on our Money Matters show, I am accompanied by Sharon at Alameda Mortgage. Hello, how are you?
Good morning.
I was on I do a morning show with my real estate mega moms. And this morning we were talking about gratitude and working in a way to show our gratitude and our honor to God. And just, so I think it like pumped me up. I was like ready and excited. And I mean, there's no way I could work to show my gratitude. I couldn't match it. But anyways, it was a great way to start a Friday. So instead of feeling like, oh, it's Friday, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Friday. So anyways, I'm super pumped. Somebody probably gave me some caffeine also, but I went decaf a couple months ago. So today we are talking about renting versus buying. And so I'll kind of lead with, I get this conversation a lot just when people are starting to explore the idea of, should they rent, should they buy? And I will tell you a couple things that I talk to people about is their emergency savings. So, do you have an emergency savings? Because you don't want to buy a house and then get into a house and experience ownership to have like your first repair happen and you have no savings, right? So emergency savings are important. We talk about down payment. We talk about DTI, credit score, 5-year plan. I will tell you one of the ones that I'm having a lot of conversations around that I feel like is a really even more frequent conversation since COVID is mobility. And so that is probably one of those that is like a really big, I feel like there is no right or wrong answer. But if you're somebody, I know a gal that was talking to me about buying, and every time we went to have the conversation, she was somewhere different. She's like, oh, I'm over here. I'm over here. And I was like, do you ever plan on being at home? And so it might not always make sense. So today we're just kind of going to give some examples because here's the bottom line, Sharon. I'm a data girl, and I think you should look at the data. You should look at your 5-year plan, look at the numbers, look at, your investment accounts, your credit score, and use that data. But I'm also an emotional girl. So I will tell you this, when somebody wants something, even if it doesn't all line up, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do it. So I think it's kind of a fine balance of the two. And so I'm excited because I think you are going to kind of actually even go over an example for us today, right?
Yes.
Do I have you there? Oh, okay, good. Are you with me? So what about you?
Yes, I'm with you.
I mean, when you think about renting versus buying, what are the first things that kind of pop into your head?
The first thing pops into my head is what I tell every single one of my customers or clients is I say, you own it, which obviously can be a super scary thing or it can be a really exhilarating thing. The big thing is but when you own it, you can put a picture up on every single wall if you want. You can paint it whatever color you want. You can have 5 dogs if the city allows it. It's whatever you want. And that is such an empowering feeling when you own it and it's yours and you don't have a landlord knock, knock, knock. I had a client who was renting. They actually bought a house last year and they were renting. And every, I think, 60 days, they had 2 Great Danes and like 2 cats. They had to load up all the animals, every food bowl, all the cages, because the landlord did like a pet check because they weren't allowed to have pets. So, I mean, what a great feeling that you don't have to load up your 2 Great Danes every 2 months and like drive around the neighborhood till the landlord leaves.
I'm just chuckling as a property manager of many years. That is the reality. It is the reality. Understandably, you understand why owners don't want pets because there's a lot of irresponsible pet owners. But the reality is that it's funny because when I think about ownership, I didn't think like pets didn't come to mind, but I bet you if there was like data behind that, I bet you there's a staggering number of people that actually want to own for their pets. I bet you that's a high number. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that's probably a huge number.
Absolutely. The other thing that comes to mind is rising rents. People kind of say, well, it's so easy to rent. I don't have to worry about anything. But you talk about your older clients, your retirees, the kids have moved out of the house or anything like that, and they start to get more and more on a fixed income. What happens in a raising rent market? So this isn't just for our young clients that want pets and kids. This is also for our older clients. In fact, you and I had a deal the Hadsills, I guess maybe are we allowed to say names? Sorry. Anyway, and the one thing that they really wanted to buy was because their rent kept going up $200 every year, and on a fixed income, that just was really scary for them. So to now be in their 60s and have a 30-year set mortgage was huge for them in that peace of mind.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times, I see spouses that want to know that, heaven forbid they're not there, that their spouse has the stability, the set income, also the safety of equity if need be. A lot of times I talk to, retirees, and it's kind of like, okay, here's the plan. This is our forever home. And, hopefully, we'll have many years in it. But if X happens, this person has the ability to survive for, 6 months, 8 months, and can sell the home and go with family or do this or do that. So, I mean, it's also a huge number of Americans that their wealth is within their equity, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So so I had somebody who's a mutual client of ours in my office yesterday, and she was like, well, I just don't know. Oh, did I lose you, Sharon? Sharon checked out on me. Let's see. It might be her connection. Hopefully it's not mine. I guess if you can still see me, it's not mine. Technical difficulties. All right. I'm sure she'll be back here in just a second. Let's see. Shoot her a quick text. All right. Well, I will keep the party going with a few things that I just kind of was noting. In addition to those other things that I talked about, that I talk to my clients directly about, I also talk about them, about where their life is headed. Oh, I think she's coming back. And do you see yourself changing? So here's what I honestly believe. My personal belief is that there's not really a bad time to buy, but there can be a bad time to sell. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're not going to be gridlocked on a specific sell date. I did have one client one time tell me I have to move. I think back at the time it was like August of 2017. And that's something you want to take into consideration. Yay, you're back.
Sorry.
I was improvising. I was like, oh, okay, good. Somebody was like, yes, we still see you, Randy. Yes, thank you so much. So I was like, well, Sharon's gone, so I'll just improvise. So I was talking about I was actually just getting ready to ask, to tell them that I asked my clients, could you see yourself trading in weekends of leisure for, for caring for your home, right? Like, and that's not going to be every weekend, but the reality is there's going to be some. And I just also made a bullet point that, at the end of the day, it's really how bad you want it, right? Some people absolutely don't, and some people do. But I think that one of the ways that you actually decide how bad you want it is by knowing the numbers. And so something I love that Sharon's got for us today is an example.
I do. I just have an example of kind of our a smaller homeowner, like where we start.
Right.
I talk to a lot of clients about this, and I say the first home that you buy, you want to go almost, in my opinion, if you really want to build a real estate portfolio, you really want to work on budget and upgrading. I always say, maybe go a little bit smaller than the dream home, so you have the options to upgrade. You get used to what that's like without blowing the whole budget.
Right.
So I just did a $180,000 condo example because it's such a great example of I don't have the money to buy. It's too stressful to buy. The maintenance of it. So kind of where, like I said, a jump off point where the condo is, the majority of the maintenance outside of the home is taking care of the roof, things like that. So you take away that scary part of I can't take care of a home. You still have the interior stuff. So on a $180,000 condo, if you just qualified for the 3% down, the down payment would only be $5,400. For that same exact condo, a rent is right about $1,300 because a $180,000 condo in this area and similar markets would be about a 2-bedroom. So your rent in that same area would be right around $1,300. So if we talk about how do you get into that condo, it's typically 1 month deposit and first month's rent. That's $2,600. A same 3% down on 180,000 would be 5,400. So if we could stretch our budget and really just double that, we could have the down payment for that $180,000 condo. With HOA, taxes, insurance, and MI, a payment on that $180,000 condo roughly would be about $1,150. So the savings is $150 compared to renting. on this particular example. And I ran, pretty pretty accurate numbers on this. So even though in taxes, everything can change a little bit. I'm usually pretty close. With that said, also, I looked up an amortization schedule, and what that shows is how much principal compared to interest you're paying each month. So each month on this $180,000 condo, in the beginning, first payment is $306 goes towards principal, which, what did we talk about? You're actually paying something off. You're actually moving towards owning something, owning it completely. So if you take another $300 off that $1,150, that leaves you with an $800 basically payment every month, because you have to look at it. You're putting $300 in savings every single month with this condo. And this also leaves you with upgrade opportunities. So if you're like, I really want to own a home, but I don't quite have the money. How many times have we talked about just get into something? This gets you into something. It's a great rental property down the road, and you have the ability to upgrade and still utilize primary interest rates and down payment. So I like this example because we've had a lot of clients that this is about their price point when they're first time home buying, or even older client that, believe it or not, we have 50 and 60-year-olds that are first time home buyers. And this is a great jump off point. It will gain equity. And then you look at, once again, let's go back to the example of, okay, I want to own it for a couple years and then rent it out and buy something bigger. Well, if your payment's only $1,150, that's with MI. So MI does eventually fall off. And the rent is about $1,300. You're still profiting $150. But once again, you look at that $306 from payment one that goes towards principal. So now your renters are giving you $300 a month to put towards principal to pay this off and eventually own it. What does that mean in 30 years? Feels like 1,000 years, right? Well, somehow I woke up and I'm freaking 45. So 30 years does not go by as slow as you think. And then next thing you know, you're in your 60s and you own this condo free and clear. And now this is something that gives you income in your retirement.
Right. Well, and that was, so I was excited. You were excited just because those are numbers. And again, this is the heart that I have behind everything I do, is empowering people to have the data to make informed decisions. Right. I just think that the 9 times out of 10, we're operating from an uninformed place. Like I just think that we're not doing it, or we are doing it based off of, pieces of the puzzle and not the entire puzzle. And so I loved this because, to recap, what we saw was basically you're going to be gaining that equity and paying down that debt, right? You're also going to be owning for less than you're renting. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm the person that would pay more to own than rent, because I like my freedom. I like knowing it's mine. I like knowing I'm also that person that, I might just be sitting on the couch on a Saturday and decide to knock a wall out, and I don't want anybody to tell me anything about it. So anyways, I love that. I mean, I think that that's really powerful. And I think for somebody that's saying like, well, this is what I hear a lot, I can barely afford rent right now. Well, you barely affording rent doesn't correlate to you can't afford a mortgage. And I think that that's a really big takeaway. In fact, it may be the opposite, that you could save money in having a mortgage. So I love this. And something I love about, our partnership and what we help our clients do is we help them to just have the information to move forward. Right. And so, right. and again, it's not for everybody. We are not saying everybody should own a home. It's not. Ownership is not for everybody. Just to recap, I think that those people that mobility is huge to them. Although in my head, and this is probably because I'm tainted, Sharon, and I believe fiercely in home ownership, but in my head, I'm like, well, have a landing spot. So in my head, I'm like, all right, well, I get if you want to be mobile, but in the back of my head, I'm like, don't you want like one place that is always there? Which I also kind of feel like, especially if you're moving around, I've seen this happen, Sharon, where people move out of our market and they move to Oregon or Idaho or somewhere because they, for a life change, and it doesn't work out per se. And then they come back and it's kind of troublesome, because I will tell you, the people that come back to a home have the safety of coming back to a set mortgage. The people who leave for 2 or 3 years and come back to the rental market, I've seen them come back and all of a sudden go, I don't get it. I was renting a house in South Reno that I loved for $1,800 a month, and now I can't find anything under $2,400. So I mean, again, not trying to go that way, but I guess the truth is my mind always goes that way.
I agree. And I think that, when I talk to clients about all these different scenarios and, clearly our passion is in ownership because what it does for you long time, you know, when I talk to them about it, it's like you could even rent this out. You could rent a room if you wanted to keep, like you said, talk about landing place. You could rent a room. I read this. I know that we don't usually talk about politics or anything, but I also read this huge article about home ownership back in the day. And I apologize because I don't have it in front of me and I wish I did to give you more accurate numbers. But this kind of goes back to Black Lives Matters and a lot of controversy around that. But one thing that I read that struck a chord with me is this one neighborhood none of the Black families could buy, only the white families. And the whole article talked about how that really pushed things down because now these white families have equity, they were able to upgrade, they would have something to give to their kids, and the Black families weren't. And so it talked about just like we have to put our mind in different perspectives on why different communities, why different races maybe aren't as flourishing. And I know that's nothing that we talk about, and I'm sorry that I brought it up, except the fact that it really struck a chord with me in the sense that this whole area of the country, it's not where we live, it's over in the East Coast, how it could possibly have led to why the Black families aren't flourishing as much as the other cultures were. So
Right.
I just
So the
thought that was
power,
really interesting.
yeah, the power and ownership, it speaks to it. And I completely agree. I mean, I see people that have definitely leveraged that equity to, open businesses, to diversify incomes, to acquire investment properties. So, I mean, it is a gateway. In my opinion, homeownership is a gateway to wealth. And I will tell you that, my heart is I am a first generation, United American on my father's side, my mom's side, many generations. But on my dad's side, my dad came from third world poverty. And I will tell you, even in the Hispanic culture, my in-laws to this day are renters, and it is very hard for me because I can't get them out of their fear. And they're not just like renters. They're like ideal renters. So I'm talking every time that they've rented, it's been 10, 15 years at a time. And they don't even pick up the phone and say like the water heater's not working. They fix it because they don't want to have a problem. And I think, again, that what you were kind of touching on, I think the powerful thing is mindset. And it took me a while to wrap my mind around this because I just in my head was like, well, why don't they want to buy? Why don't they want to do this? Do they want to do this? Do they want to build this? And my husband was like, no, they're happy. And it took me a little bit of time to realize like I didn't come from a third world. I didn't take the leap of faith to bring my family from another country. So I don't know how much they cherish that security and that stability, because for me, I was born into at least those levels of security, if that makes sense, like a home. And so it is my heart. And I want to share that, again, wherever you are, it's our heart to help empower you, because I want to go into these areas and to, for me personally, like I want to go into where, there's housekeepers that have been working in these casinos for 20 years and they have, worked so hard and they're still paying rent. Like I want them to know it's possible, right? Like it is possible. Home ownership is possible. And you're 100% right. I mean, in making this move and this change, you do change the course for generations, right? Like I stretched, I'm being 100% honest. My dream home came before I was fully ready. And so if I was asking myself the same very questions I started this show with: emergency funds, down payment, DTI, investment accounts, credit score, 5-year, I stretched and I did what I had to do to make it happen, because like I said, if you want something enough, you'll make it happen. And so I did it. But now it's kind of unlocking the next layer, and I still have a vision. And eventually, like what I'll be leaving will go from enough that provided for me today and my family to hopefully providing for multiple of my generations, if that makes sense. So,
Absolutely.
So no, I appreciate that you shared that, because I think it's important too, to know that, there are a lot of people out there that just don't know, like I think, and maybe I'm overstepping, but I think that there's people that think, well, they're not talking to me. I know it's possible. It's not possible for me, or it's not possible for my family, or we just don't do that, or, whatever. I would encourage you to push out of that comfort zone and have a conversation, because like I said, I do believe this is the gateway to wealth in many, many aspects.
Agreed. 100%. We've talked about it over and over again, the upgrade possibility, the equity, what we see our clients doing just this year alone, moving from condos to homes to manufactured to stick built. It's giving yourself opportunity. Quite a few clients that I'm working with on the refi side, to where we're paying off $20,000, $30,000 in debt. and really, because they have the equity to do that now, which had they not bought a home, they would have debt and rent as opposed to utilizing their mortgage. We've had multiple clients this year also refinance, take the cash to go buy that second property, that rental
Mhm.
property, to continue to build the wealth that we're talking about. And the big thing, I forgot to mention this, the big thing, and I know I said it, but I want to make sure I really say it, is that whenever you buy a home, let's say we get them in contract in January and they close in February, they don't make a payment until April. So let's also, I want to make sure I put that out there. In when you rent, you have to pay a deposit plus first
Right.
month's rent. So it's like, okay, but where am I going to get this $5,400? You're going to get it from, you don't have a mortgage payment for the first 30 days. So you can also utilize that money that you put aside for rent and a deposit. That's why I was saying, $2,600 would be your first month's rent plus deposit. So now we just got to figure out, how can we double that, get to 5,400, and then we work on some credits. Not to mention every single state has a down payment assistance program that we could always look into.
That's really powerful. And I really liked, honestly, to be 100% honest with you, I had looked at, a few different ways on, getting in the door. And I really had never thought about, well, if you're just moving, you have that first and that last. And I had not thought of that. And so that is really, I mean, just think about it. Like, when we start talking about $2,500, that's really obtainable. I mean, there's the ability to have it gifted. There's the ability, I mean, right now is tax season coming up. I mean, just again, making different choices. I see, and I'm never going to come from a place of judgment, but I see a lot of tax money and get spent in different ways. Like, oh, our income tax is here. We're going on this vacation, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. And don't get me wrong, I love to travel myself, but I would encourage you to think about the wisest investment for that money, and where you could put that money and make get a return on it, right? Because 9 times I was guilty of that, years and years and years ago, especially when my kids were little and I actually got money back. I was like guilty of it. I was like, all right, where are we going? And it was like extra money. And I didn't look at it like strategically placing it. So anyways, thank you so much, Sharon, for always joining me on Fridays so that we can help people along in their journey and in just kind of deciding what's right for them. As always, if you're looking at purchasing a home, we would be honored to get that opportunity if you don't already have someone. So Randy Mendez with Mendez Home Team at eXp Realty and Sharon Thompson at Alameda Home Mortgage. You can Facebook us, DM us, give us a call or text anytime. We'd be honored to answer any questions you have. So thank you so much, Sharon. I appreciate you. And I'll see you here next Friday, right?
Yep. Happy Friday, everyone.
Same place. Bye, guys.